Let's meet someone who has scaled global brands, embraced bold risks, and empowers businesses to thrive. I'm Kate Save. The Inspired CEO starts now. Welcome to The Inspired CEO, where each episode we explore the innovative wellness practices that are driving success and longevity in the modern business world. Tora Brophy is a digital commerce leader who has driven growth for major brands in Australia and New Zealand, rising from the shop floor to lead teams at Google and TikTok. As TikTok's country head of small business, he helps businesses of all sizes succeed on the platform. Outside of work, Tora enjoys surfing, sailing, and outdoor adventures with his family. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity, Kate. So great to join you.
Well, I can't help but call out, you've had a surfing injury. What happened? Where were you?
Yeah, so you notice on my right eyebrow, I was surfing last Monday and my board came up and clipped me on the eyebrow. There was a lot of blood, and the thing that I was really disappointed about is it's the first time I've been in the water in 2 months. I was so hungry. I was ready to get out there for another few hours, but I had my session cut short.
That can take us back to where your career first started. So you started on the retail floor with Billabong, was it?
My first job was on the shop floor at Billabong on George Street in Sydney, selling board shorts and bikinis.
So what year was this?
This was, you're taking me back and challenging me, I think it was 2005 that I first started. And the main reason and the appeal for me taking that job was, great, I really enjoy surfing. How can I get paid to do something in my same lifestyle where I can watch surfing videos all day and then help people while I'm doing it as well?
I must say I grew up very similar. I started at Groundswell in Rosebud in Victoria, so miles away, but loved the surf industry. So how did you then work your way up from the floor, the shop floor, to where you took Billabong with e-commerce eventually?
It was a meandering journey, right? It was no single step. It was a series of single steps, but all in different directions to be able to help to where I am today in my career, and I'm excited for what lies next as well. I would say, in short, it was knowing what I wanted, pursuing that, figuring out what that felt like, and then taking that next step after that. I think another commonality was also not taking no for an answer or being driven by people telling me that I couldn't do this, or it was challenging to do that as well.
So back in 2005, was Billabong online?
No, Billabong was not online. So back in 2005, we were selling board shorts on the shop floor, and we had, I was working with Billabong, who at that time was owned by the General Pants Group. They had the license to run those stores. They also operated, obviously, the General Pants network of stores and Surf, Dive and Ski. And my first journey from there was on the shop floor. The next progression was to an assistant manager role. And then after that, I kept on kind of pushing and aspiring to be able to take that next level. And for me to be able to step into a more elevated role and look after the online business, which was my next role, the rite of passage was to go through the front desk. And so I was picking up the phone for General Pants Group for at least 2 years, saying, hello, General Pants Group, this is Tora speaking. And that was a really interesting role in itself. But that kind of presented and took me on a few more steps towards that online career where I see myself helping businesses of all shapes and sizes through digital today.
And so you went from Billabong then in the e-commerce landscape over to Under Armour, and what did you do there?
I went from Billabong, so skipping forward a few years, I landed up in Billabong and I was running their e-commerce business there. And we bought that business online for one of the first times ever. It was really exciting being able to digitize this business. For example, move from a traditional wholesaler model to all of a sudden take on this new space, which is direct to consumer, selling all those products and from all these amazing brands across the Billabong group online. And that was an experience and a learning with so many dimensions, working with some amazing general managers of these different businesses to be able to help them understand the importance of online, but then also how to navigate such a dynamic online, almost like an unhinged landscape at that time, where businesses were still figuring out what is the role of the online channel to a brand? How do we make sure that we show up in a brand right way? And how do we make sure we give customers the best experience possible when you can't be with them face to face?
Yeah.
I took some of those learnings and then jumped across to Under Armour, which is fantastic.
And so you took Under Armour from being, where was it founded? What country?
Under Armour was founded in Baltimore.
Right. And how did you take that globally? Because it went from, in Australia, the presence was quite small when you started. Is that right?
Correct. So I joined Under Armour, and my mandate for joining that business was to be able to set up their direct-to-consumer business in Australia. Previously, we'd had a wholesale presence, which we ran through Super Retail Group's Rebel Sport. This was about taking the keys to the brand and being able to own that experience ourselves as Under Armour globally. So I was one of the first handful of employees for Under Armour in Australia, responsible for building out their e-commerce websites and also helping to open the 7 retail stores that I did, which the team have taken it on to do even more retail stores around the country.
Incredible. And from there to Google.
Yes, there to Google was another big change, and one that I wasn't ready for. It just appeared. However, I knew it was the best thing to do. And I knew it was the best thing to do for myself because not only was it the opportunity to work with some of the most brilliant minds in the world, it was also an opportunity for me to be able to test the winning growth strategies that I've had for other e-commerce businesses. For example, what I've done with Billabong or Surf Stitch, Surf Dive and Ski and Under Armour. I wanted to prove to myself that I could take that to even more businesses around the world, around the country in Australia. So I was working with retailers, again, of more of a developed portfolio of retailers there, helping them to grow their business with Google and what the best of what Google has to offer.
And for the viewers, I have to ask, tell me a little bit about the Google culture, and is there the big slide that we all hear about, and what did you see at Google that you can't unsee?
Oh, there's some pretty funny things in the office, everything from a VR room where you get to experiment and play with some really cool things to, a Wi-Fi based piano which plays, your favorite song on demand by itself.
Wow.
To then obviously in some offices around the world, you've got some incredible features like slides. We're also incredibly privileged with obviously food and services and other associated benefits. Would you believe that there's an in-house massage and wellness space inside the Google office in Sydney as well?
Oh, incredible, incredible. And so then from Google to TikTok. Now, TikTok is still quite new, but when you went there, it certainly was very new, particularly for the Australian landscape. How did you navigate a platform that has evolved so quickly?
TikTok it fascinates me because it's so different to Google when you stack them side by side. And Google has seen tremendous growth outcomes over 25 years with some of the smartest people in the world. And TikTok, by contrast, has seen multi-billion user growth in a fraction of that time. And what excited me particularly about the Aussie business was we had 350,000 businesses of all shapes and sizes in Australia on the platform, and over 8.5 million Aussie users using the platform. And I think the third thing which really brings it home for me is that every single month in Australia alone, over 3 million people discover a product or service on TikTok. And that growth happening in such a short period of time really attracted me to be a part of the movement and then learn a lot more from what they were doing as well.
And after visiting your offices at TikTok, I can see that the team works so hard, and it's a really innovative, creative space to be working in. There's so much colour, so many different areas, and I think hearing how quickly that perhaps a year happens in 3 months of development at TikTok, how do you lead a team when perhaps that vision isn't as clear as what it might have been for Google, where the path is not laid out for you?
You're right. I think that stepping into ambiguity as a leader is one of the most challenging things. And as I reflect on my experience so far in my career, it's actually been a commonality at almost every single stage where I've been stepping into these roles which have never been done before or spaces which have not yet been defined. For example, at Billabong, it was setting up e-commerce for the first time, or with Surf Stitch, it was taking one of the most influential online retailers in the surf industry space and moving that forward. And so to get back to your question around TikTok and how do we navigate that ambiguity, I think the core thing comes down to setting a really clear goal for what you know at that time.
Yeah.
Being prepared to iterate that, and then surrounding yourself with a really great team and rallying them towards that goal. And again, if you've got those 3 components together, there's probably some of the basic components of a few required to be able to not only rally around something, go and get it and execute it, but then also learn and pivot and adjust to be able to figure out what happens next as well.
So what would you say one of the biggest challenges in your career to date has been, and how have you worked through that?
I think one of the biggest challenges in my career has been embracing the ambiguity. Actually, I would say one of the biggest challenges in my career has been prioritization.
Okay.
So much easier said than done.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're faced with all these opportunities, how do you know where to go?
That's exactly the challenge. And so it's about figuring out what do you need to solve for at that moment in time. Knowing there's probably a desire to solve for many different things. However, what you need at that point in time is going to, you have to anchor on that. And then that makes many other different things clear in terms of wants versus needs. It's kind of like the urgent versus important scale.
Yeah.
So in short, figuring out what I need, and that actually extends prioritization to my own family life as well, how I use my time, spend my time, and then what do I focus on at work as well.
Now, going over to the personal side of life, family, health, you've had a really busy career, but you have kids as well?
Yes, got 2 boys.
There we go.
Boys.
How old are they?
They're 4 and 6. So one's just coming out of kindergarten, about to go into year 1, and one's coming into his last year of preschool.
Wow, so that is a busy, busy time. So how do you prioritise your own personal health and your family plus a career that is rapidly growing and evolving?
There's a lot of talk about balance.
Yes.
Right, but my take on balance is that it's something you can work towards, but it's never a state that you actually achieve. So it's something that you can kind of continue to practice every day. However, the realities of every day don't look balanced.
Yes.
So for one day, you might work really late and you've got a deadline or something like that. For example, the next week, you might be spending more time with your family. But when you zoom out over a long period of time, you're actually solving for balance over a longer period of time. However, in the moment, it doesn't always look like that. Yeah. What I try to practice is being able to understand where I need to lean in on one side and where I need to lean out on the other side, and understanding that I will compensate and give back to those different buckets over a longer term.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I've got the expectation that something's going to be busy this week, but tomorrow it might not be busy, and I can make time and carve out time for that to happen in the future.
That is a very calming thought, to think that you don't need to make all of those choices just for now, that you can actually focus on this thing now and the next thing tomorrow, and that bucket, that time will come and everything will be looked after. It's not just this one decision that'll make or break everything.
Correct. And you're right, it's about setting expectations for yourself about that. I mean, personally, I'm a naturally ambitious person, and my to-do list is long, and it gives me a great anxiety that I'm not going to get through to all of it. I think what helps me is setting those expectations about what needs to be done now versus what is really important to me, for example, and that helps me figure out, again, prioritization, where I need to spend time, what's going to be truly important for me. And ultimately, it's easier said than done. It's a hard thing to practice, because putting family on the same index of importance versus urgence as work can sometimes feel really foreign. Yeah. However, I think you kind of have to also listen to yourself in terms of what are those internal needs that you have, and your own energy as well. Ultimately, there's going to be times where you can definitely show up and approach and attack that moment. And other times where you need to say, no, this is going to be time for myself. I need to reserve that, block that, and save space for that.
So how do you manage your own health and fitness? What do you do to stay fit? And do you have any rituals or foods or anything that, make you feel good on the inside?
I might not be the shining example for that, Kate. However, I would say calendar blocking is probably my go-to.
Okay.
It's really important for me to be able to set that structure. And my structure does not look like a typical 9-to-5 day. I think there's actually, like 4 components of my day, the early morning, mid-morning, afternoon, and then evening, which I break up, and work and family and self actually intersect at all parts of those days. So it makes it a little bit challenging, but I think where you can kind of overcome those challenges is transparency, especially when you're managing a team, to make sure that they can see, for example, my calendar, and I put all my personal things in my calendar as well, so they can see that time where I'm with my kids and I'm not available, or that time where they can contact me. There's a communication, setting expectations about here's where I'll be, here's when you can access me. It's okay to message me 24/7 because that's on my terms. And I think that last part is being able to keep that structure for myself, to be able to insert those, feel confident about inserting something that might not be work related in the middle of the day, but it's really important for me to be able to get that energy to be able to show up later on that evening if I've got an evening call or an early morning call.
That's spectacular advice, because I think most people don't do that. They're scared of that transparency, and most people put in more than they need to put into, but they feel so guilty about those personal moments or family moments. And when you miss those things, they're the things that really drag you down in terms of mood. You put those things in, you show up better. Oh, really interesting. So looking to the future, what excites you most about the trends in e-commerce, the digital world? Where do you think things are going to next?
Oh, personally, I get a lot of energy from being able to show up with businesses, help them drive growth outcomes through digital. And that's exciting to me because you can do it at scale. And I think that's the beauty of what digital and platforms, software gives businesses. Ultimately, though, in terms of what's coming up next, I've got no crystal ball. How I tend to look at these things, though, is typically about what the customers need and want.
Yes.
And I think what we've observed over the last few years, especially coming out, over a post-dramatic change world, over the last few years, has been these forms of muscle memory have appeared. For example, online shopping through COVID.
Oh, yeah.
How we got our groceries. It's created what I call a form of muscle memory, which has stuck with us. And some of those trends continue to persist in a post-COVID world. And so that's what I'm really excited to see, how they come, what sticks, what doesn't. And then I think the second thing is really thinking about, at the moment, businesses have also seen such a big wave of change.
Yes.
They're thinking about unit economics and profit outcomes more than ever. I'm excited to be able to dig into help businesses be able to crack that. I've anchored my career on the growth side of businesses. What is that other side? How can we provide more helpfulness to businesses on that other part of that dimension, moving on beyond the acquisition and marketing arms, so everything else that they do? That's going to be a really interesting space to me. How do we help businesses show up, drive their bottom line, as well as which give them sustainable long-term commercial outcomes, as opposed to just thinking about narrow growth marketing?
And there is no more critical point than right now when it comes to economic outcomes and what's happening in this space that you work in SMEs, where businesses are collapsing left, right and centre, and there is no financial certainty.
Correct.
But being able to use the digital platforms that we have available to get more insights, more return on investment. And over to you now, thinking about what lies ahead for Tora. So you've done so many different things and there's so many more doors you're going to knock down next. But how do you keep going? I'm sure you get a lot of yeses, but there'll also be a lot of no's. So how do you keep going?
The no's personally motivate me.
Yeah?
And it's that persistence which I feel has brought some benefits in my career. And I would share that, one of the most insightful things that I've discovered, and one a former leader has shared with me, is don't let the world happen to you, go and happen to the world.
Ooh.
And I've taken that mantra with me, and I really enjoy, and I think I get so much reward out of these conversations or areas that I pursue in my own career, where I can be that change instead of letting the change happen to me. And so when I can take control of those things that I want, have a really clear view of what I want, takes intentional steps in that space over a period of time and build up those habits, that's been super rewarding for me. So I'm eager to there's still a few spaces that I want to continue to crack that I have no idea about. I'm having some conversations with people at the moment to be able to say, what does that look like? How do I understand this more? Connecting with people to be able to learn and then step into those spaces and define them, which otherwise were undefined, has been super rewarding for me. And I would say is a muscle which I recommend other people to do in their career. Make sure they can carve time, take intentional steps alongside their job at the moment to be able to invest time in learning more about things that you ultimately do want to do or you're interested in. And then you either figure out if you like it or if you don't, and you can take that next step after that.
And if you get a no, just keep going. Persistence is key.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, Tora. This is the Inspired CEO, and we'll be right back.